Many of us strive to be the best versions of ourselves in the workplace. We set seemingly impossible goals. We battle to achieve them. Often in that pursuit, we forget to take the same level of care and diligence with ourselves and with the ones we love the most. LodeStar is about those moments, the ones that shape go-to-market journeys and the humans behind them. We'll dive into the wins, the mistakes, and the lessons that don't fit neatly into a playbook. Hi everyone, Cliff Simon here with another episode of LodeStar. I'm joined today by Elio Narciso, the co-founder and CEO of ScaleStack. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you for having me. Hi everyone.
For the people watching who don't know who you are, want to just give a quick intro?
Sure. Born and raised in Italy. Moved here to do an MBA, and then I stayed. That was, 2007. And before ScaleStack, which we started about 4 years ago, I was at AWS. Here in New York, built a program there for helping the go-to-market of lots of different companies built on AWS and AWS themselves, and discovered that the world of go-to-market is still excessively inefficient.
Got that right.
Particularly around data. And so we started thinking with this idea around, well, there should be a system that creates reliably good insights and data and infrastructure so that people can build use cases, apps on top of it. And so that's when we decided to leave comfortable big tech company lives and start ScaleStack. But we are extremely excited about what we're working on, particularly because I think that in the age of AI that we are all living, companies will be run by agents. Mm-hmm. And so if 5-6 years ago, the idea, yes, your CRM data or your data lakes need to be in good order so that humans can act on that data to power go-to-market. This is even more important now because if anything, AI weaponizes bad data. And so 100%. Having this infrastructural component that powers lots of different insights across the org, which can be composed by humans and agents, it's even more important today, we believe.
I think you and I both agree on this, right? That foundational data model has to be set. If you don't have that, you can't do anything else with agents.
Yeah.
So how do you help companies get there?
I think the first step is that data lives in many different places, particularly for larger companies, which is our key demographic, let's say, of customers. The first thing is data lives in many different places, and so you need something to easily connect all of that data and absorb it and manage boring but very important stuff like rate limits. And each data source acts differently, and they break, they stop, they restart, and so you need to have an orchestrator that it's super flexible and reliable to absorb all of that data. The second pillar, I think, is that you need to have intelligence. I mean, the reality is that what we build used to be done primarily by people, analysts on the data.
Middleware.
Going row by row and fixing the data. And so to do that, you cannot just have automation. You need some layer of intelligence, which now is provided by AI. And so agents that act as analysts on the data to clean it, validate, and enrich and prioritize and score, but with sort of an intelligent approach, which is not just automation, right? And then the third component is that because the data lives in many different places, because there are lots of different agents, you want awareness and context across the spectrum. And so everything operates within what we call workflows. And so agents for us are modules in a workflow. So components that act with memory, with awareness, with context from other modules, other data. And so these are the three elements that we built in the platform. So it's quite technical and quite infrastructural, if you want. But I think that that's a good thing for our customers and for our differentiation in the market, because there is a lot of point solutions and tools. We want to occupy a place where this is infrastructure that you need to run your go-to-market at scale that runs mostly autonomously.
And I think for me, the most important component of that is that context layer. How would you encourage companies who are not there yet to derive that, create that context layer so that when they are ready to start using an agentic workforce, they can upload that and make sure that it's the right thing.
So I think that the most exciting part about what I and the company does with customers is that we talk a lot about business logics and like what's your ICP and like how do you build like an understanding of your target customers. So these are all like business logics that we discover with customers in a meeting or two. And once you have like a good verbal knowledge of this, you can transfer this knowledge to an agent. And then an agent is aware of like all of the modules in our platform, all the tools that are available, or other modules, and so can build the workflow independently. And so I would say that it's pretty bread and butter in the sense that like we talk about business stuff. We talk about who is your customer, like, and where do you learn about your customers? And like, what are the key attributes that you care about to prioritize the work of your reps or your marketing team? That's context. And like, if you provide to AI context and strategy, then like the results are like incredible because the speed at which like these analysts in workflows can operate, aware of other analyst agents and other modules, is remarkable. Over the last like 6 months, the platform has made like giant leaps. And so I think that what's interesting is that we spend the majority of time like talking about like, business stuff with customers and how to translate that, like into objects and modules and workflows. But that technical part is done mostly by agents.
So you're able to take all the functional knowledge and let the technical components be composed by the agentic team.
Yeah, the more we think about our platform, the more we think it's like a lot of APIs that can be consumed. Be consumed by mostly agents. I mean, like like Glean. Like at the end of the day, like I'm not gonna read the policies or like all the rules. I'm just gonna ask a question to an agent, and the agent then consumes all of the data, or like summarizing, am I gonna re-listen to all of the calls that I do? No, I mean, like give it to an agent and I want a summary and I want some action points. And so that's how we see the platform, that there is a lot of like underlying complexity and components and modules and agents and workflows. But essentially the UI UX is an agent which receives business logics and inputs and translates them into workflows, other agents, research, validation, infrastructure, components, etc.
The pace of change is somewhat terrifying for folks who aren't living this day in and day out and are just dabbling. To those people, how would you explain the difference between the concepts that you're building around these systems of action and systems of information and systems of record, all of that being connected mostly from an MCP perspective, to like what they might try to attempt to do on their own in Claude Code?
The speed of change is terrifying. Yes, I think we should acknowledge that. and so like we're all living in a very transformational period. I was reading an article about like when teller machines, ATMs came to life, there was like a lot of worry, like all tellers jobs will disappear. Today that's true. It took like 30, 40 years. And in between, number of teller jobs grew because, banks started hiring more tellers to have like engagement with customers and like absorbing customer needs. And then, so instead of like counting the money, there was the majority of the time that like a teller would spend, they started engaging with customers. And so I think we should all acknowledge, yes, it's like pretty crazy. I think we'll find a way because this is what we've seen over and over in technology transformations. It's less about like technical stuff and more about like having clear ideas about like your customers, your strategy, your ICP, and verbally, being able to describe is the difference between like the student and the teacher. Is that like you can be a good student, but like until you aren't able to explain confidently, then you maybe don't still own the subject. And so like if you don't know how to describe your ICP and confidently describe your strategies, maybe there is more work that needs to happen there.
Well, the challenge I constantly see is that companies might have looked at it at one point in time, But as they grew, they didn't update that. There's no annual process for that. It's just like we assume, right? And they assume based off of the people who are most readily giving them dollars versus the people who are most likely to drive NRR or GR.
It's a great point. And so I think that my current read and maybe hope is that like instead of like, oh, like what can we do on Cloud, what can we do on Clay and other like tools, I would love for like people, including us, like, spending more time on like the strategic stuff. Are you sure that you know who is your ICP? Are you sure that like the buyer persona is very clear? And is that like knowledge distributed and like updated regularly across the org so that everybody owns it and everybody has the same understanding, instead of like, oh, this guy's doing this guy's doing that, and everybody's doing like their leader like Gemini like pre-call research and they're all different, and so what's the point? Hopefully maybe that's what will happen, that we will have more time, because more agents and more like work, repetitive and a little bit boring work is done by agents, and so that we can spend more time on customers and customers' problem and defining who is the customer, which I think is very important. A lot of the inefficiencies, as you pointed out, like in sales and marketing, is because all this knowledge is not there. So what we are seeing is that like every revenue team is becoming more technical, and so everybody is building apps and artifacts and experimenting. And I think that that's great, because like that's how like innovation gets built. Like people having like more of a product mentality, which is more pure in a way, because like forces you to be more focused. If it becomes like that people have to do constantly the same things, like the little apps and the new artifact, that becomes not very different than handling a spreadsheet, which is very manual. And so like if we keep having people spending like a lot of time doing that and handling agents, then maybe we should rethink. And so what we propose to customers and what we advocate for is that there is a layer of experimentation that is individually driven with many different tools and technologies and Cloud and Clay, etc. But then at some point, you want to have like sort of the best artifacts should win, become products in a system that is run autonomously.
Agreed.
And hopefully people will choose ScaleStack to create, that system, which is mostly a system of actions. So there are many systems of action. There is like, we sell essentially agentic workflows to customers. And so each of those workflows are like systems of action. Eventually, if we do a good job and like, add more and more workflows, more and more systems of actions, that body of system of action will eventually turn in a system of record that is very proactive, autonomously run. And so, yeah, we'll see structurally what will happen then.
It's interesting because ultimately this all comes back to the customer buying journey and the way that they perceive the value that they're receiving, right? It doesn't matter how good the technology is or isn't. They have to understand that they're getting something out of it. I think like you talk about the bank tellers and the ATM machines. I think too when McDonald's started using the kiosks and they saw kiosk adoption just like it was terrible. It was terrible. Yeah. When they put a human being next to the kiosks, kiosk adoption went through the roof, and that's when it started really proliferating across all of fast food.
Forward deployment.
A forward deployed engineer, exactly, right? So it's someone in the field helping guide the customer journey and being like, yeah, did you take a look? Here, this is how you do it. It's that ease of use, because I think we've become very lazy by and large as a society. We want things to be very turnkey, and I think especially with like the Gen Z generation and now Gen Alpha coming through, people have been taught, even I think like I used to be a big video gamer, right? The games I played growing up, you had to discover things. You were always trying to figure it out, and you learned through failure. Whether it was like playing Final Fantasy VII or World of Warcraft or even like Zelda back in the day, right? You died and you had to restart. Yeah. Nowadays, like the way brains are being wired and trained to run, there's a UI path. There's an arrow telling you where to go. There's a guided experience. Yeah. And I think it's a very different mentality as we continue to see this adoption with younger generations, that they want this guided path because we haven't given them the skill sets to think critically.
I mean, there is a lot there, like, about generational differences. No, I mean, some of those things, I have children, and like, some of those children are like showing some of those signs. They're also showing some other signs, which is like, they are much more aware of like many more things than I was at their age, because they're just exposed to a lot more. So I think that there is so much competition for like our attention.
The attention economy.
And so there is so much competition for like apps and tools and like, things that we are exposed to, that I don't know if it's laziness. It's just that like, there is only so much that the human brain can process. And so a comfortable experience of talking to a human that can guide you. We've been thinking a lot lately about like UI, UX. So like what should be the UI, UX of ScaleStack? Because it's an infrastructure product. And so like, we don't want to dumb it down because so that we are more comparable with other, UI, UX. At the same time, like, you want to make it so easy. And I think that our initial instinct is being like to give customers like a forward deployment engineer, sort of like, the guy that helps. I mean, it's not really an engineer, it's somebody that knows the platform really well.
Yep.
And that's what we've done for like our customers.
Really good enablement.
In the future, I think that like it seems that a lot of products are converging to this conclusion, which is like, we will have an agent, like the guy that
something
shows,
I can talk to.
Yeah, that's so that like, in English, I can describe what I need. And so it's important that I describe what I need very well. I mean, prompt engineering is really like, be very clear about what you want and provide as much context. That's going to be the UI for ScaleStack going forward for sure. But also, we will continue to have for like larger customers, like, somebody that helps them with the menu.
Yeah, it's funny. When we started doing the podcast back middle last year, the conversations I was having and like sort of the conclusion I came to is the first wave of AI adoption that we saw was for people that were already way across the chasm, right? Folks who are so interested in this and really willing to put the time and effort into it. And the stuff that's being upgraded and or delivered now is the first real components of AI that I'm seeing that like my grandmother could use, right? Like something where you could hit a voice prompt and talk into it, it receives it and runs an action based off of that in a meaningful way across multiple tools.
Yeah, I think this explosion of AI was started because ChatGPT. I mean, like the technology has been building up. I mean, I think the pace of capabilities and robustness of the technology is like, accelerating at a crazy speed. But really the changing element was ChatGPT that like clarified how you can engage with this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see my parents, they engage with the agent for like simple tasks, but that like maybe used to take them a long time. They recognize that there is like value in that efficiency of summarizing information, quickly accessing what you need without spending time, reading everything.
Yeah, 100%. You guys are going through a fundraise.
It's been a process.
Yeah, especially in this day and age.
We started, I think, in October last year, so a good 6 months. If you compare like the pitch in October 2025 versus the pitch now, it's like night and day. It's, completely different. And that's the result of like a lot of like iterations and thinking and adjusting and fixing the narrative, because the narrative is very important, because I mean like you cannot lead if you don't have followers.
Yeah, that's true.
So fundraising is to find like followers that put money in that vision. And so if that vision, I mean, at our stage, we can show revenues, customers, they will talk to customers eventually. But I think the first 1 or 2 meetings, it's mostly about narrative and understanding like where do you fit and how do you see yourself fitting in a pretty competitive and challenging category, and what's the differentiation and what is going to be the differentiation going forward. So it is a very competitive environment right now, and I think that the bar for like Series A is like way higher than it was 2-3 years ago, in terms of revenues, in terms of like maturity of the product, in terms of like so many other elements. First and foremost is about you, so like how you describe like what you're doing in a way that makes sense. And then it's also like finding the right people.
And is it real revenue? Is it experimental revenue? Has the pricing model been fleshed out?
Yeah, lots of those things, which I think in our case we're different. So like, probably because of our enterprise focus, like, we have like, very little churn or almost none. Like customers are expanding and building and so, but the growth is probably like, less impressive than like a tool that you just put your credit card and you can churn like, the next week.
Sure.
Explaining that like in a way that makes sense for you. I mean, like also you want to be very truthful to yourself. I mean, this is like a meaningful investment.
You're holding the mirror up, right?
Yeah. Man in the mirror for me is like, number one, like, priority. So like, am I being honest with myself? And am I saying something that I believe first? In order to then convince others. Leonis is the lead investor, and Leonis Capital, and they have a very strong thesis around AI and what you need, like in this new AI world that we're living in. People from OpenAI like are at the company, at the investor. Zapier invested in this round, which I think is super interesting because when I tell people, are they like semi-competitors? And the fact that they invested is like a testament, I think, to the depth of our infrastructure around like creating this system of actions on the data. They have, I think, 8,500 apps connected, and so
it's incredible.
Creating, the connections between apps is
and their MCP is like very, very good.
What we do is like we go inside and like go very deep on transforming the data that then you move around.
I think like building an early stage company is hard enough, but then you start going through the fundraising process. How does that affect everything else in your life in your 5 to 9?
So you can do this either when like very young and like very unstable and don't have other like responsibilities, and so you can devote this to completely, or when you are like very stable. And like I feel that like thanks to my wife, we have like a very stable like family, and I can rely on, and other things in my life are in order. So I think the difference between Elio like 10, 15 years ago and Elio now is that probably I used to work longer hours before children because there were no constraints. And now like the constraints of the family, of the children, have like forced me to, at some point, like, time's up. If you want to take care of your family, you need to take care of your family. And so the difference is that I'm a lot more focused. I know like what are the priorities instinctively almost, and what's important and what not. And then the intensity is much higher, I would say. Like that's what's also changed. Like maybe my days are shorter compared to what they were, but like the intensity is at a completely different level.
Yeah, I feel like we used to have like 45-minute phone calls, and now it's like 15 minutes, and it's like boop, 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 boop.
It's the intensity in that. Our like jobs entail that like we're driven by our calendar, yes, for sure. So there is that intensity of pace. And when we say the market is like complex and AI is transforming everything, like you need to spend like meaningful brain power and like find a way, right? So what exactly are we going to do? What's the plan?
I feel like very similar for us, right? By the time this comes out, we'll have released our AI study, and just going so deep on 40 plus different tools to really figure out like what was working and what wasn't, and doing user interviews and all the different components. Like, wow, that took a lot of time and effort, but like in order to just even try to stay close to up to date, I feel like it's impossible to do so, but to try to be within maybe a single arm's length away took so much time and effort. We just had our 4th kid. So
really?
Yeah.
When?
6 weeks ago.
What?
Oh, I didn't know if you didn't know. Thanks.
Congrats.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
I think I have 3, so I think we're done. Wow.
Today, 6 weeks ago today. He was born on a Thursday. So
nice. Congrats.
So that's keeping us pretty busy. But it's very similar, right? My wife runs the household. Everything's stable there, and that allows me to pop in and out to New York, London, wherever I need to be in order to continue walking the business forward. And how old are your kids?
18, 16, and 4.
That's a gap.
That's a gap, yes.
So a bit of chauffeuring and a bit of, I guess potty training is probably over now. So
No, yeah, I mean, like he thinks he's like 16, so.
yeah, naturally, right? Wants to be like the older
Yes,
siblings.
yes.
What's a day look like for you?
I wake up, basically with the little one, which is like before 7, and we do maybe like spend an hour and a half together, and it's super intense, and we play and we like read and we do breakfast for everybody else, and then I usually take him to school, and then I go to the office, and it's super intense between like 9:30 till like 6:30, 7. Unfortunately, I find that my most creative time is like between 5:30 and like 8 p.m. So I need to cut it.
Yeah.
So 7 p.m. like I'm usually home, and then crazy dinner, like what's going on, and like advice, college applications, and stuff like that. And
Yeah, so you're on both ends of the spectrum.
and then it's 10 p.m. and everything is quiet, and I have another hour or two for myself. But quiet time for me, it's also very important. So yeah, that's my day.
It's like for us, sort of similar, right? Like 7:30, I get up, and then do breakfast with the family. Go downstairs at 9, and then just like run through the day till about 5:30, 5:45. Then I go upstairs and have dinner. But I find my most creative and like impactful hours are usually like 4 to 5, and then from like 10:30 to 1.
You do work.
Yeah, because there's nothing else distracting. My team's on the East Coast and the West Coast are done at that point. My team in Europe isn't up yet, so like I can just work, and I'm not getting inputs from anything else. I can just clear out the day.
Yeah, sometimes I do, but I find that like I'm so tired by that time that like unless I go like to the gym late or like I love to run, I come back like so energized, like I'm not tired anymore.
My workout's at night usually, right?
At night, yeah.
Well, I play hockey.
Oh, wow.
It's like 2 to 3 times a week, and like the other night I had a game that started at 9. The other night I had a game that started at 9:50, right?
Yeah, so
by the time you get home, it's like 12, 1, right? And then it's like, okay, I'm not working tonight, obviously, like I'm going to bed.
That's
I think
impressive.
because my body's so used to being up at that time of night and doing high intensity
I
activity.
don't know how you do that, man. Like, that big commitment with 4 kids, that's incredible.
Well, it's because it's the only time everyone's asleep. I used to play travel soccer in an over 30 league, but that doesn't work. When you have 6 p.m. game times, that doesn't work with dinner. Thank you guys so much for joining for another episode, and we'll see you next time.